Hi everybody, this is Ramanuj Mukherjee from LawSikho. Welcome to our today's session with Tanisha Deshpande, who's our guest today. And we are going to talk about attrition in law firms and how to arrest the trend. And uh, Tanisha works in legal recruitment and also legal practice management with a lot of top law firms across India, and they are based out of Bombay. But before we go into the subject, let's hear more from Tanisha. Hi, Tanisha.
Hi, I'm sorry. Can you hear me, Ramanuj?
I can hear you. So
And
if
can you
you,
see me?
yeah, I can see you. I can hear you. Everything is working fine. If people who are attending the session,
Okay.
if you can hear Tanisha, just write yes in the chat. The chat is open. Just write yes. And
Okay. Unfortunately,
I'll request
I'm not
everybody to
able to
quickly share
see
your
you.
background. Whoever is in the session, share who you are, what do you do, and like what are you looking forward to take away from this session. We are live on YouTube as well, and anybody who's on YouTube, you can use the YouTube live chat. I'll keep an eye on YouTube live chat as well. Feel free to introduce yourself and ask questions as well. Yes, Tanisha, please.
Hi. So I'm sorry, I didn't entirely hear you. I heard you introduce us a little bit. So I'm going to take the liberty to talk about
Yeah, please,
myself and the
please
Grey
tell
Matter
us
first.
more
Okay.
about gray matter and yourself. Yeah.
Sure. So the Grey Matter is essentially a boutique consulting firm. We're based out of Bombay. We're three women that established it and we run it. We work very closely with law firms essentially on the, like you said, practice management, business consulting, strategy. These are a couple of things we do with law firms. And in addition to that, of course, we're all lawyers ourselves. So we work very closely, one on the law firm side with our clients, but also each of us have our own extensive pool of friends and peers who are lawyers. So I think by default we're very integrated into the system, right? So we actually started off before I launch into why we did this video, which we will share with you shortly. I do want to take a moment to say a very big thank you to everybody who's joined this chat. You've chosen to join this conversation versus watching Netflix. We appreciate it immensely. So thank you. Right. So moving on, uh, shall we show everybody the video right now, Ramanuj? Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, sure. Please, let's see the video first. Yeah. So you can share it on your screen.
So I mean, can I display my screen essentially?
Yes, you can. Just
All
see
right.
there's an option called share screen, a button right in the middle at the control panel. Can you share screen?
Yeah, one moment. Yeah, I see it. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and play this video for a moment.
Mhm. got that. All right, so that was an interesting video and a lot of interesting findings. Do you have also a PDF that you can maybe share across with people, or maybe you can share just a link
Absolutely.
of the video so that people can watch it again?
Why not? Would love to. Yes, we'll definitely do that. It'll be good for you to just keep handy. So we'll do that. So just want to share why we, decided to do this. Essentially was because we were having a lot of conversations with, friends, with peers, with people that we had worked with in the past or continue to work with around just, why are law firms dealing with the kind of attrition that they're dealing with? And sure, you see a lot of corporates dealing with attrition as well. I personally worked at a LinkedIn, so I did see that they have their own attrition cycle and their own challenges as a corporate. But I think in terms of policy, corporates are far more structured, and law firms sometimes have a tendency to lack that structure because it is primarily run by a bunch of individuals called the management group, essentially, right? So we were very curious as to, do people even get asked why they're leaving? Does anybody check in with them to say, hey, you're moving on, which is okay, but what's the real reason, right? So that's why the survey was.
Tanisha, I need to stop you for a moment. The one thing that is happening is that your screen is shaking, right? So is it possible that you can keep the laptop or phone, whatever you're using, on a firm ground?
Of course. Is this better?
Yeah, I mean, it was shaking earlier. The other thing is that, is there a way you could like maybe, no, it's fine. It's fine. Go ahead. It's working. Go ahead.
Okay.
Speak.
May I request, just everybody else who's on this call to go on mute on the video, because
Everybody is mute. Everyone is mute. They cannot unmute themselves unless I unmute them. Except for me. I will also go on mute while you're speaking. Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. Great, thank you. So essentially, I think, the reason was to ask the question, why the attrition? Why are you choosing to move on, right? And that's what the survey threw up a fair amount of answers around the why, which are actually interesting. I mean, you can always go back to it because I don't want to spend time revisiting the survey. But, what happens with attrition is that for employers, and I mean, I use the term employer loosely, but essentially law firms, attrition is actually a huge problem. And here are a few key reasons why attrition is a huge problem to law firms. One, there's a cost to hire. So each time a law firm hires someone, there is a massive cost involved in hiring people. When somebody leaves, there's another round of cost because now you're also finding their replacement and going through the drill again, right? So there's a cost to hire and there's a cost to fire or exit. Another problem is that team morale can sometimes, take a dip. It can, and in fact, often is impacted when somebody from the team leaves. There is a bit of a ripple effect on its other members as well. The other thing that happens is at some level, I think the brand of the firm, right, has a tendency to suffer as well. Especially, you will see that there are some firms that are known. You will hear people say, yeah, I'm just going to spend a year and then I know I'm going to move on. I just want the brand on my resume because they're so certain that they're not going to be able to survive that environment for very long, right? The other problem with attrition really is also that clients are your they're key to your business, and therefore the people who help you service your clients, which are these very capable lawyers, are key to your business. When they walk away, all the accounts, so to speak, that they're managing, or the client relationships that they're managing, have a tendency to suffer a little bit. And in firms where there is very frequent attrition and your point of contact with clients changes very frequently, clients also tend to question and wonder why, right? So that can bring in, a little bit of instability, if I may use the word. And lastly, it's very painful to rebuild and reinvest in new resources. And I feel like that is another huge challenge that kicks in when law firms have to deal with attrition as a problem. So at many levels, I think it can be crippling, both monetarily and otherwise. So yeah, I actually have some very interesting statistics that I made note of just for our chat, because I felt, unfortunately, the Indian media doesn't have this kind of content, Ramanuj, because, I think Indian firms are a little more conservative. sharing this information. And also, I feel like, since nobody does it, anybody willing to do it is also slightly afraid to share that information. But there is some very interesting data that's been thrown up with, some international research papers and magazines. I'm actually going to share that with you and the audience today. So, on an average, firms lose about 15 to 35% of their lawyers annually, which is a big number, right? Most of the loss happens at the mid and intermediate level associates, which is also the toughest bracket, the toughest level to fill up, find refills for. Losing an associate costs a firm about $200,000 to $500,000 is what the New York Bar Association said in one of their research papers, right? So even if I were to commentary look at, say, the figures for Indian firms, I'm assuming it's easily double digits, lakhs for sure. So that's a big sum to lose. Worldwide, we've seen that there's more attrition when it comes to women and minorities. 35 to 50% of associates who start off at large law firms, we see that in 5 years, they either are not working with those firms or they completely quit the legal profession, which is again very interesting data. The last interesting statistic I have is lawyers are apparently determined to be in the top 10 professions to suffer from depression or mental health challenges, usually stemming from their work environment. And I just wanted to also, just touch upon mental health as a very, very critical piece, which I would like to further elaborate on eventually, and why attrition and mental health tie in a huge way.
Yep. So, definitely this is a very major issue, and definitely for lawyers also, it's a major issue. Apart from, it's not only something that, it's like, not just that something, bothers the law firms. But here is the question, do you think that the reasons for attrition and the numbers are quite different at the senior level and at the junior level? Because I'll tell you something that I have seen in my own experience.
Of course.
I graduated in the 2011 batch from NUJS, and 32 of us. So I think there were total 105 people in our batch when we were graduating. Out of that, 32 people joined 5 top law firms that hired from campus that year. And amongst these 32 people, I left my job at a big law firm after 12 months, exactly around the 12-month mark. Okay. And my plan was clear from the beginning that I wanted to start up, and I wanted to experience working at a law firm, and I also wanted to I had to pay off my loans. So there were some financial reasons that I wanted to work in a law firm for some time. But that was not the case with many of my friends, right? But I was the 20th person out of those 32 people to quit. So this is just 1 year after people joined, and 20 people, including me, out of those 32 had left. And if you look at this, it looks like disastrous for the firms that hired these people. And you wonder why they are hiring at all. And it's not just NUJS, right? It was like across, this was happening in all law schools, like, other batches. And, it happened, like, if they hired, let's say the law firm hired, 30 people in a year from different campuses.
Correct.
50 to 60% left by the time the year was over, and by the time 2 years are over, even more left, right?
Correct.
And this is an anecdotal data, right? It's not a survey. But I am sure many other people have similar experiences. So from my perspective, it looks like a disastrous situation. Why would you hire people like this and pay them for a year? But by the way, junior lawyers don't become very productive from day one, right? So you have hired them. So you have to train them. They have to get used to the work culture. Most people who are joining a law environment in the first year don't know the work. They have to learn by observation, trial.
Absolutely.
And you wonder that, okay, people learned something maybe and they become productive around 6 months mark. Let's say they become productive for the firm around, like they are paying their cost by the time they are in the 6th month, then
Correct.
if people, so many are leaving by the first year, within the first year, then it must be really costly for the farmer. How is it working at all for them in terms of, numbers? So this is one question. But I think once the people left, many of the people, a few people who stayed back after that 2-year mark, those people stayed back. At least if they're not in the same law firm, they went to another law firm and worked there, right? So in a way, I feel that, okay, there is some stability around the middle, but even then people, and there's another, value of death. After people have worked for 4-5 years, they just leave. Say, I'm done with working in law firms. Now time to do something else. So first year definitely is one danger zone where a lot of people drop off. Then there's a period of 4-5 years where people have worked, then they move into in-house, they go practice on their own. They move these days, and many people move into smaller cities to set up their practice there. So these trends are there, and I think numbers are different at these two levels. But the question is that one is that I would like to know, I'm sure others will also like to know, that what is the reason for this kind of attrition rate, very high attrition rate, and what is it that the law firms have been doing? So my experience is 10 years old, let's say 9 years old. But since then, what has been done by law firms, what have things changed since then? So what are your experience and thoughts here?
So you make very interesting observations there, Ramanuj, and I concede with what you've said. I think you're right when you say that the first year associates are a very, very expensive category to hire for. And then when you lose them, I'm sure it can be very crippling for law firms. I do feel like the first year associates, in my view, law firms hire basis scores, basis which law school and the pedigree of the law school you went to, right? So I feel like the metric basis which law firms are hiring can be a little flawed, and I feel like that strategy needs to be relooked at for the simple reason that I firmly believe, that you need to hire for attitude because skill can be built. Okay. So like you rightly said, anyway, your first year associate is not going to be in that sense helping with billable hours for the first 6 months to 1 year, right? Or even if you're adding their name there with a certain amount against it, against their name on a client memo, the amount is going to be negligible. So you may as well invest in people who got the right attitude, who I think have a very keen sense of, practice, as in desire for practice of the law. I think it's also important, apart from law firms, I feel like as candidates, right? And you'll agree with me. I mean, when I'm going to share a personal story here. I went to Government Law College here in Bombay. And, by year 3 out of the 5-year course, all my peers were applying to different internships, and everybody wanted a corporate internship, and that is what the entire focus was on, right? And when I look back, I actually wanted to drop out of law at year 3. I wanted to finish my BLS and kiss my course goodbye. But unfortunately, I got caught up with that, peer cycle and, peer pressure, got into the rigmarole of working with a corporate law firm, and I didn't enjoy it at all. But I don't think I took a moment even to assess whether it's something I liked, whether it's something I wanted to even do. And I feel like as candidates, as freshers, as students in the penultimate or the ultimate year of law school, it is extremely critical that we spend some time just assessing what we really want, because there's a tendency to get very badly caught up with what everyone else is doing and not really asking ourselves what is it that we want to do, right? So I'm actually going to share another story with you here, Ramanuj, where we were doing some mock interviews with a bunch of law schools and law students. One of the law students walked in for a mock interview and he said, "I'm here for a corporate job." Okay, this was a mock interview, of course. And I said, "Okay, please take a seat. What's the difference between a private and a public company?" He was clueless. His, blank expression, radio silence. So after the mock interview was done, we had a counseling session. So I checked with him and I said, "Hey, do you really want to do corporate law?" He's like, "Actually, no, I just want to run my own restaurant." So I was like, then run your own restaurant,
Right.
Why the pretense? He's like, no, ma'am, but everybody's saying, that corporate law is the thing to do. I said, corporate law is the thing to do if you're going to enjoy it. If you're going to keep doing corporate law thinking of butter chicken, it's not going to work out very well for you, right? So, so I feel like on the candidate side also, we tend to make that mistake where we don't assess our own career goals, our own aspirations, our own strengths and weaknesses objectively. We tend to get caught up in a web of what everybody else is doing. So I think on the candidate side, it's very important that we make that assessment. Also, extremely critical that we assess the places we're applying to. Right. So let's say I'm applying to a tier one. Sure, I may have the scores and I may come with a pedigree law school to my advantage. But the question to really ask ourselves is, I'm applying to this tier one, but is my culture, my personal culture, aligned with the culture of this firm, right? So let's say I'm joining a firm which is very aggressive, which is very, number driven, which is all about, billables. And let's say I'm somebody who's, more about relationships, cohesiveness, I'm a team player. How am I going to thrive successfully in that environment? Forget thrive, am I even going to survive that environment, right? And there boom comes in your attrition, right? It's a problem not just for law firms. I feel like it's a problem on the candidate side as well, which needs to be addressed.
That's true. Like,
So
sometimes, I'll tell you a very interesting story. There's a friend of mine, batchmate. So we prepared for law entrance together. And when he was giving his law entrance to get into NUJS, he knew exactly what he'll do when he graduates, which is that he'll work at Amarchand Mangaldas. Okay. And
correct.
and for the next 5 years, we studied in the same college at UJS, same batch, and he always knew that he's going to join Amarchand Mangaldas, and he did, and he got through. Okay.
Sure.
And he got through, and he worked there for 3 months, and he left. Okay.
There you go.
And now he cracked UPSC. Very brilliant person, right? No question about that. So cracked UPSC, is now a government officer, doing really well in his profession. But
nice.
Sometimes we have these notions about what you want to do, but
Correct.
once it comes into contact with reality, because people don't know actually in reality what it is like. There's so many people I see, they say, I want to be an IP lawyer because they like Copyright Act or Patent Act in college. They have no idea.
Even worse is, I want to be an IP lawyer because I love Bollywood. And I'm like, no, then become an actor, become like an AD or something on a set.
Director or whatever.
IP law, yeah, but not IP law for sure, right? So
right.
there can be that disconnect.
So that is definitely an issue. But what do law firms do to filter these things out? Because see, people will be people, students will be students, and young lawyers would be like that in the foreseeable time to come. So what do law firms do to filter? What is your experience on that?
So to be honest, I feel like different law firms do different things, and I think that they're in the process of reinventing the cycle, at their end. I don't think they've all entirely succeeded, but like I said, the good news is that they're trying. So I'm actually going to walk you through a few measures that I've either observed or feel like they should be implemented, right?
Sure.
So firstly, I feel like, this conversation shouldn't be about arresting attrition. It should be about ensuring retention. And the two are very different things. The end result is the same, sure, but I feel like the approach and the attitude is vastly different in the two statements I've made, right? Because one is very negative. Hey, I want to contain. I want to ensure nobody leaves. So that is arresting attrition. Whereas ensuring retention has a very positive flavor to it. Like, I want to ensure that everybody is harmoniously working together in an environment that works for them, right? So I'm going to use the term ensuring retention. So here's what law firms can do to ensure retention. Like we discussed, when you're hiring, all right, have your checks and balances in place. I feel like, aside of technical know-how, we need to start looking at people as people. So can we do a personality assessment? Can we check for alignment with firm culture? Can we check in to see if they can withstand the kind of pressure a certain practice area will lend? For example, if I am taking on somebody on the capital markets team, which is, say, turning IPOs, week after week, and it means doing a 4 a.m. for many weeks back to back, can this person really withstand that? Is that something they're going to enjoy? I feel like these are questions that law firms need to start thinking about and trying to assess at the interview stage itself, right?
I think they
So,
supposedly do that, right? They try to do that also. But our question is how to do it right, because they have been doing it. I mean,
correct.
they have been trying to assess for those things. But obviously, people lie in the interview. People say different things
That's
than
the
what is on their
problem.
mind.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so what's the solution
That's
to
a challenge. So I do think that there are a lot of sophisticated tools now available for personality assessment tests to assess your strengths and weaknesses. They are not very expensive. I think it is worth investing in those tools. It is worth buying annual packages with those tools, because I think the insights they can lend is actually, it's going to be incremental to the hiring cycle that any firm has. So that would be one suggestion.
I think
The
one thing
other,
that has worked with a lot of firms is that increasingly hiring long-term interns, right? So they prefer hiring long-term
paralegals,
interns who have
correct.
done well in the organization and is connected with it, knows the work, has done well in that environment at that level. So there's a higher
Correct.
chance that they will succeed. So I think long-term internship is definitely one of the top hiring strategies for many law firms.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, there is a limitation with that. While I agree with you, I feel like there's a bit of a limitation there, because a lot of long-term interns come in just for 2 or 3 months,
Why two
and
or
I'm
three
not
months is not
entirely.
long-term, right? That is very short.
Yeah, it is short term. That's what. So you'll have to keep having them come back, repeatedly, till you can actually assess whether they're fitting in well. But yeah, sure, that's a good way to do it. To have repeat interns come in. If you're based in a city where there are law schools, like say you're in Bombay, you pick up a few students, say from GLC or MNLU, or whichever other law school you may wish to. I think that's another good way to do it. For sure, that should work. I also feel like when lawyers are hiring, the onboarding process, right, of anybody that you bring into your system, whether it's a lateral hire or a fresher, it's extremely critical that you pick up, you understand that people want to feel welcomed, right? So when they walk into the system, it is extremely essential that you have the right kind of onboarding system in place. You have the right kind of people welcoming them. There's enough assistance and support that you lend in the beginning, because the initial months are the months and period of integration, right? So that healthy integration of an individual into your organization is very, very critical to see whether they will stay with you long term or not. I also feel like creating a healthy ecosystem in terms of support, right? Can you give them buddies? Can you give them mentors? Can you give them people who are not lawyers, even? Let's say someone from the support side who will be somebody that they can go talk to about their problems. Yeah, basically, how approachable is the culture that you've built, right, internally, for new hires to feel welcome, and then also to sort of help them navigate the ecosystem of the firm. That's another big piece. I also feel like it is extremely critical that training and development is something that law firms should focus on. While a lot of law firms do internal presentations, they do a lot of research paper writing. Um, a lot of it is just lawyers churning out things for clients, right? But who's teaching lawyers? So CLE, continuing legal education, is the concept in the West that is very, very popular. And I think it's almost critical that every firm follows a certain CLE framework. Whereas in India, I think there are very far and few firms that follow CLE in the true sense of continuing legal education. So maybe that is something to definitely, emphasize and rethink, because doctors, lawyers, I think these are professions where, every night, if you're going to choose Netflix over reading a judgment, then you're going to become a little lesser of a better lawyer than you were yesterday. So I think that's another very important piece. Uh, Offering flexibility is a huge one now. We've seen during this lockdown, unfortunately, it's taken a pandemic like the COVID-19 for us to understand that work from home is successful. You can trust your people. No one's fooling you. No one's cheating you. They will actually work when they say they're working from home, right? So work from home options, flexible timing options, in fact, even flexibility in terms of structure, right? Why do I have to become a partner? Why do I have to become a lockstep model based partner? Right? What if I want to take a slightly non-traditional route? Will the firm allow that? Right? So when I say flexibility, I don't mean just in terms of operations, but I also mean in terms of structure. So that's another way to do it. Um, another very key thing that comes to my mind, and the survey threw it up as well, which is, well-being. Mental and physical well-being of people is something that unfortunately the profession is demanding. It can be lonely, but I feel like that has led to a huge, huge crash down in the mental health and the physical health of a large number of lawyers. And I don't think this is a Bombay or India specific problem. In fact, like I said, statistically, lawyers are in the top 10, professions that have mental health issues that they have to battle with, unfortunately. Can workplaces make it, almost their responsibility to ensure that the people who work there are I'm not even saying take responsibility for their happiness, but some responsibility for their sanity would probably be a good idea, right? So can we minimize politics at the workplace? Can we build supportive structures rather than structures that are going to pull each other down? Can we ensure that we're not creating environments that are hostile to working? Because sure, competition is important, sure, client deliverables are important, uh, but focused on the well-being of that individual, right, is also very critical. So,
Yeah.
and I think there are firms who've now started, empaneling psychologists. They've started doing a lot of health and wellness workshops. While those are a one-off thing, I think they need to be almost integrated. How you do an appraisal, I think those need to be integrated in the same way that you have your
Right,
appraisal
right.
cycles.
I think law firms are exploring these things, and these are very hard things to get at, and only a few very big law firms have the resources to do this. But it hasn't. I don't feel that anybody has succeeded yet. One interesting point that I want to highlight is that even when I was working in a law firm, and so I've heard from countless students of Law Seco that when you go into a law firm, the challenge people face is that number one, you probably haven't been trained for the kind of work that you're going to do there. Unless you have worked in that role before in a different law firm, mostly you're not prepared for the kind of work you're going to do. No matter how much you have studied in college, if you have been a topper, doesn't matter. Probably you don't know, and there is no prior preparation for it in most cases, except unless say you have done a course like Law Seco where you have been trained to do that work. Now, what happens is that when you are trying to learn the work and do it at the same time, okay, it puts a massive pressure on you. So, for example, let's say you have never seen the FDI policy of India, but suddenly you are working on transactions, and let's say you are asked to write an opinion on something, or you have to do something where you have a research even to deliver, where all this, so you're learning something which you have never seen before, which seems fairly complicated, very different than anything you have done in your life. And at the same time, you are trying to deliver high quality work. Now, this is very stressful. And what happens is that, okay, let's say say a senior associate gave you this work and and he needs to deliver it tomorrow, right? So he has given you 24 hours. Now the problem is that, after giving it to you, he may not get, and you gave it to him after 6 hours, right? Maybe you gave it in 2 hours, but he doesn't have time to check it till evening.
Correct.
And when he opens it at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, he's expecting to have something which is ready and he can make some quick changes and be done with it. But he finds something completely unexpected that he was not expecting to see. Now he's like, oh my God, I have to now redo this entire thing. And he'll call you and he might scream at you or express his frustration in whichever way, disappointment. And then both of you are sitting late at night trying to do this, and both of you are tensed and disturbed about it. So there is like that kind of stress that is getting created, and I think this is a very familiar experience. Anybody who has worked in a law firm will say that this has happened again and again and again. And I think that is also something that creates this mental health issues, that creates stress, that creates, and it's, I think, that is a major issue that many people face, and things get a little better over time. So the reason as many people are not dropping off in their third year or fourth year is because of that. But there is a time when you have been working on these things for 3 year, 4 year. Sorry. So 3 year, 4 year, you have been working on something. Then the challenge becomes is that are you going to be able to, grow any farther because you're comfortable with this kind of work. But now the firm is expecting you to do some other things as well. Like they expect you to manage juniors, and you have never managed juniors, right? You have no training in how to manage juniors. You are expected to go and do some business development, and there is no training you have in how to do business development. And you are just expected to do and magically figure it all out, right? And so that is another area. So number one, that people feel that, my work is not growing, intellectual growth is not happening. Okay, there I have been provided a path that, okay, from associate I'll become senior associate and then principal associate and managing associate and whatever, right, partner. That's happening maybe, but even then they feel like, what am I doing? Like, am I learning enough? Am I doing enough? Am I, what is the value that I'm creating more? Like I used to do this 2 years back and I'm still doing this. The same documents I'm drafting. Where is my growth happening, right? So there are some people who are able to transition to the business development side because they have some natural talent and others don't. And that doesn't mean they couldn't be good at it. It's just that they needed training for that. And there is no such training available as such. And by the way, law firms have tons of training. We cannot fault them for that. They don't have training. Most of them have, every week they have sessions, there are so many things, knowledge management teams, but somehow all of that is not still helping people to solve these challenges. And it could be because it's not training for training's sake. Maybe the training requires to be more customized to solving these problems. So I think training for key issues, identifying key issues why people are leaving, and half the time people don't know. They may not be able to articulate why they're leaving because they haven't identified it as a problem. They will complain of a dissatisfaction. They'll complain of stagnation, but they will not be able to say that, why? Because I'm not able to seamlessly transition into the business development side. For the firm, I'm not able to bring clients. So that they may not be able to actually identify. And firms also don't always expect that you'll be bringing clients, etc. But at least you have to manage a team. At least you have to, start, maybe reporting in a more efficient way and helping in running the organization, contribute to leadership within the organization. And those things are hard for people to do because they are not used to doing that. Now, I think that's where maybe some training is missing. And what do you feel about these two things? And I think that is the two major reasons why people drop out exactly at this point, year 1 and year 4. I need to unmute you. Hold on. Yeah, you're unmuted.
Done. Thank you. Hi. So excellent points there. And I love what you began with, because that's been a personal experience as well. When I began my career with a law firm, I stayed there for about 3.5 years. And I was miserable, not because of anything else. I think I had an immediate senior. My partners were excellent. They were great people to work with, really kind, very nurturing. But my immediate senior was a terror, right? And I feel like aside of management, right, it is also the immediate seniors that we work with who hugely influence our careers, right? And how they treat us. And like you rightly said, I have a senior associate that I'm reporting into as an associate, but they find that my work is not up to the mark. But then again, I'm learning. So it can become a bit of a catch-22 because you want them to treat you with kindness because you're just beginning to learn on the job, right? Or for that matter, even for a 2 or a 3 year associate, if something new is coming in, if it's a unique proposition of the law and you've not worked on it before, I feel like, that's going to take some time for you to pick up. I would say that at law firms, I think the mid level, which is your senior associates, principal associates, I think it is extremely critical that they understand their own roles better. In the sense, they've done that trajectory, right? They've been associates. They know what that feels like. They've also been at the receiving end of a lot of flack, and now they've been set into momentum to become leadership. So you're going to become leadership at a firm, big or small.
I really don't think we can blame the senior lawyers because, what can they do? They have to deliver. I mean, they are under pressure and they have been given resources and told perform, and the juniors are not performing.
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yeah.
I can promise you this, okay? I've worked in sales at LinkedIn, okay, and I did that for a very short time. But you had to see the kindness and the dignity that people treated each other with, right? And there is no job that pays adequately which will not put pressure on you, right? I'm sure you and your team at LawSeco have your own pressures. I mean, I see you're doing about 3 webinars a day. You know, Bhavna's promptly sending all the Zoom video link messages on that WhatsApp group exactly half an hour before it goes live. That's pressure, right? So there is no job that is pressure free. But does that give us an opportunity to be unkind to each other? And can that be an adequate excuse? In my view, absolutely not. I think it is unpardonable. And I think that is one of the key reasons that we see attrition. We see some of your top performing, like you said, your batchmates out of 30 to 20 walked away from the big law firms. I feel like the key reason is the environment that we build for them. And it is not a conducive one. It is not a happy one. And I'm telling you, I feel like law firms are losing out on excellent talent, on lawyers who could potentially be the Zia Modis and the Ram Jethmalanis of tomorrow, simply because they are not able to withstand the drama and the pressure that some people at law firms create. I'm not saying management creates it. I'm saying management needs to take an active call to be more involved, to understand what's happening on the floor, and how can they arrest it. Because, you know, Ramanuj, it is one thing to talk about culture, but it is an entirely different thing to build good culture. And I feel if one has to build good culture, your top management, your leadership has to be involved. They have to be invested. Otherwise, it's not going to pan out particularly well. So, yeah,
Agreed. You know,
that's my view.
that brings me to something, makes me think of something. We all know partners in certain law firms who loses their entire team every year. But
Of course we do.
but
Of course we do.
and of course you do, because you have a lot of work because of them, right? Every year. So
Actually, I don't do HR at all. So, you know, my friends in HR are benefiting, sure, but not so much on the strategy or consulting side, unfortunately.
yeah, but clearly it makes sense for the law firms to retain them, and rather than, you know, even if they're at the cost of losing entire teams every year, right? So, and rehire them and pay for the cost of rehiring. So anyway, so I mean, I think law firms in a certain way have accepted the reality in a way that, you know, we are going to have attrition. But there are certain law firms which are not having that much attrition, and there are some notable exceptions that law firms with very little attrition. Would you like to take names? I could name some names. Would you like to?
I'm going to refrain from taking names because I think that will be very unfair to the community at large. Because if I'm naming some, then does that mean the others have an attrition problem? So I think that would be very, very unfair to do on a
Fine.
forum.
Okay, no problem. So what is it that, you know, so there are some law firms definitely which have managed to create an environment and culture where they have very little attrition. So what are they doing right? And I think it's a good idea if we take some, I mean, you don't want to do it, fine, but, you know, I think it's fair that if we need to discuss some good examples, right? We talk about it in a way.
So I'll talk about good examples without, on a no-name basis. I think that's okay to do.
Okay.
So I think one major one is, you know, when senior management understands that millennials and the new age folks that they are now hiring, you know, while they're influenced by a suits and they want a Starbucks coffee cup in their hands when they walk into a law firm and they want the fat paycheck, they also want a lot of purpose and meaning to the work they do. They are not okay to meaninglessly be stuck in jobs that don't give them satisfaction. So I think satisfaction and driven by high purpose are the kind of individuals you're now dealing with, right? So if you can understand that, and there are few firms which have understood that, and they're catering to that need, right? So allowing for your lawyers to actually spend some amount, a small portion of your billable hours on pro bono work, for allowing more team-based activities to happen, which creates a greater sense of oneness, a greater sense of, you know, camaraderie among the team. I feel like these are very small, almost inexpensive ways, for everybody to start that process of integration that I spoke of earlier, right? So that's one. And I think the other is largely law firms are, you know, some law firms at least are becoming more aware that, hey, you know what, there's a problem to begin with, right? And I feel like that that very confession, that very acknowledgement is the first step that they're taking in the direction of making change. So we've had some firms, and in fact, the Grey Matter has conducted this for some firms where we've done, employee voice surveys, where you do an anonymous survey firm-wide to get feedback on what is it that everybody's feeling, what is the sentiment, and then how can we take that feedback back to management anonymously, right? And I'm so pleased to share that we've actually had management that has not pressurized us to say, give us names, give us names. It's not happened. They've been very calm about the feedback. They've actually received it very well. And they've taken measures to make changes. And I feel like that is a very encouraging sign as well. Right. So that's another great example. Another one I would say personally is for, like I said, it all comes down to culture setting. I mean, I can give you the example of LinkedIn, like I was talking earlier, and I'm sorry, I'm compelled to draw parallels to the only other example I have, okay, which is my own experience. So there were sales, okay, it was a sales role. There was massive pressure. My target annually was 3 crores, okay, annually. I had to make 3 crores, and I was like a first year sales associate. If I had to draw parallels, I was A0, okay, in the LinkedIn ecosystem. But the kind of nurturing, the kind of handholding, the kind of training that I received was, I cannot complain. And above all, my manager was a taskmaster. He was completely number focused. In fact, in my view, and I've said this to him openly, he completely lacked empathy, okay? And I had some very bad accounts, okay? I was given accounts which basically were definitely not going to renew, okay? Were not going to renew their LinkedIn paid LinkedIn subscription. And it was very challenging. While there was, I did have nights where I couldn't sleep because the pressure was so much. The truth is, at no point did I feel like the ecosystem was disabling me. Because work pressure is going to be there. Like, to draw parallel for law firms, there is going to be client pressure. There's going to be billables you have to take care of. But I think a healthy ecosystem, a healthy culture is a very, very key part of what we're trying to do or change at law firms. And I think for that, management really needs to be far more deeply entrenched and involved in what is happening. So I think spending more time with your people, whether it's on team outings, whether it's doing like an offbeat coffee session with them to just
I think there is too much of that in law firms. There are too many offsites and too many parties out. I don't think that really helps. Like, it may help to an extent, but real issues are different. The real issues are elsewhere.
So the engagement has to be meaningful. It can't be we all go out and get drunk, and the firm pays for it. Because then that's just, everybody trying to be a freeloader. But more meaningful engagement, like I said, take smaller teams out for meals to understand problems maybe in a certain practice area. Can you cross-sell that practice area, tie it up with something else? Do a deep dive into individuals, especially your A0 guys, right? Because if you're looking to groom them long-term, one is them. I think the other key focus should be your mid guys, the mid-level associates who you're hoping to convert to the leadership rank soon. I think they need a lot of time with partners and management. I think they need a lot of handholding. And also, like you rightly said, they're at that key point where they have to do 2 things. They have to be excellent lawyers delivering great quality, and they have to now start building a book of business, right? Because they're now expected to also wear the hat of a rainmaker. So I think that is another area that needs a lot of attention and a lot of handholding. So yeah, I think these are a few measures that some firms are definitely taking. And,
So I have been interviewing a lot of law firm founders. Okay, for example,
I've been watching.
Right. So there were a few interviews, and I were really instructive on this point. Like one, I remember interviewing Sunit Katarki from Indus Law, right?
Okay.
And there's a very interesting thing he said is that one of the important things is to involve your lawyers into the management, not only legal services. From day one, you are involved.
Correct.
And you are part of the process where you are deciding how to drive business development, how to drive the brand of the firm, how do we go about holidays, how do we go about work from home decisions. Like when you start involving a larger number of lawyers and even the junior lawyers into decision making, they have a say, they have an opinion, and everything is taken into account, then suddenly there is a much higher level of interest that people have
Correct.
in growing the and they feel involved. They don't feel disconnected from the business and larger business objectives. And I think that's one very important thing that I have heard before. Other law firms also have said the same thing, and I have seen like there are a few law firms which have really low attrition, and all of them had this quality that everybody talks about open door policy, everybody talks about taking people out for outings and all of that, but more than that, are people involved in the business? Do they feel
Well
like a
said.
stakeholder? Do they
Correct.
feel that they are driving the business, they are in the driving seat for the business and invested in the business, right? So I think that is very important.
That's a good point you make, but honestly, at mid and small size firms, you can probably still try and execute that. I am not entirely sure how firms which are say 100 plus people or even 60 plus people, I'm not entirely sure how they are going to be able to manage the logistics of this. But it's a good suggestion. In addition to that, I would say that while you may not be able to involve everybody in every conversation, honest and open communication is a very important part. And I feel like especially relevant today, in times of the pandemic, in times of threatened pay cuts, in times of threatened loss of jobs potentially, right? There is a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety that people are anyway feeling right now, right? We've seen some of the large firms already announce pay cuts. I'm very sure that we will see many more names on the list, and there are those who will never, openly talk about it, but it's already happening behind closed doors. When you're doing things like this, right? How effectively are you communicating with your people, and what are you saying, and how are you saying it? How is it landing on them? I feel like these are also very, very important aspects of communicating with your team, right? And especially when you're communicating bad news, how are you communicating that bad news? Are you doing it with empathy, or are you simply sending out an email that says, hey, 30% pay cut, deal with it, right? Or are you going to have a team call? Are you going to explain the why behind it? Are you going to assure them that they're not going to lose their jobs, right? In a time like this, especially. So I think communication is key, and effective communication is an even larger key in the ecosystem right now. And I think lawyers, unfortunately, and I'm a lawyer myself, and I'm married to a lawyer, but I hate saying this. Lawyers are very cagey, they're very, very overcautious, very scared to reveal too much information at all times. And I feel like that needs to change. They need to start trusting their own people a little bit more.
Right. Higher level of transparency is important, right? So, for example, in LawSico, we try to run a very transparent company. Like, our daily sales and costs is known to everybody in the company. It is literally shared in a WhatsApp group. So much so that even my competitors know, because it is shared in our WhatsApp group. So they find out what it is.
So they find out, right.
So, that's one thing. The other thing is that, and we are fine with that. We don't want to hide that. We want our people to be involved at that level, that they know the revenue for the day. And when we need to work together, and that has happened, like when things don't work, people come together and do the extra bit to make it happen. The other thing is that, if we are going to take an adverse decision, we are going to much before. It's not like the last moment we're going to discuss. We start discussing, what can happen. And, there are like all hands meeting where we discuss literally that, what are the different ways things can go, and what should we be doing? So naturally, everybody is involved. It's not like we are a 50 plus team. It's not. So, I mean, I don't know how it will be 100 plus, but I'm sure I will continue to do this. The point is that people get to, and somehow everybody comes to a decision that is in interest of when you give them the power and you give them the trust, that, what should we do? Like, we are all in this together, and this is a situation. Sometimes, and it's not only in my company, like I've seen companies where people have to take a pay cut, right? But then everybody discuss that who are the people who are not in a position to take a pay cut. Let's say somebody has a ailing mother she has to pay for the mother's cost. So then other colleagues said, you don't take a pay cut, but we'll take a bigger pay cut. And when people create these kind of workplaces, it's a fantastic strength to the business. It is not only about dealing with crisis, but such teams stay together. They are grateful to each other. They, move heaven and earth to succeed, right? So I think that's a
true. That's
bigger
true.
benefit of it. So
I
great.
know we have the last 5 minutes left. I'm going to make one exit point, which is a key exit point. When people announce that they are leaving, right, and how law firms treat them at that point is something I wanted to throw a little bit of light on, because I feel like when people put in their papers, and our survey also showed you this, that there were about 50% firms that don't even do exit interviews, and those that do interviews, about 60% partners have dealt with exits really badly, right? So I feel like I need to highlight this. Again, making the reference to LinkedIn, they always know that you're going to move on to another job at some point. It's called your next play in LinkedIn language. Okay. But when you're serving your term at your existing firm or organization, what is it that you're doing to grow exponentially as an individual, and also what are you doing to ensure that you are in some way becoming part of the history of that firm and its growth and its trajectory, right? Or how have you been a part of the firm's history to ensure that the mission and goals that it set out are met with eventually? I would like to say that I think firms need to understand that when people leave, they don't need to take it personally, right? Whether it's management, whether it's an immediate senior, whether it's your colleagues on the same team. I think we have to understand that beyond the point, it's never just one reason. It's an amalgamation of many reasons. So I would say don't take it personally. Two, I would say treat people respectfully, right until their last day. That don't strip them of their dignity just because they put in their papers. They did serve you well. They did right by you while they worked with you, and now they've chosen to move on, which is okay. And lastly, I'd like to say that law firms should remember that people who are leaving law firms are actually their biggest brand ambassadors. If I am leaving, let's say I work with LawSeco, and if I were quitting, I'm your biggest brand ambassador, because I'm going to go out there, potentially talk about you in every interview that I do. For my next job, I'm potentially going to talk to all my friends and peers in the industry. I'm actually going to spread a lot of word about you. So if you leave me with a bitter pill to swallow, then I'm going to spread a lot of negativity about you out there, right? So I think it's very important that we remember that people who exit are actually our biggest brand ambassadors. So I just wanted to make that point as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We also say the same thing about interns, that you make sure that interns have a great experience, because you may think they're inconsequential, but they're going to go out and talk about you for the next 10 years.
Correct. So, and they're going to be your next potential, senior associates, principal associates, and perhaps partners potentially.
And potential clients tomorrow. Like they will be going and working
you
somewhere
never know.
else.
If they go in-house, then you're in deep trouble.
They will go in-house. Many of them will go in-house. The people who are leaving law firms, many of them will go in-house.
Will go in-house, correct.
Great. Excellent.
Super. So this was good. Good talking to you. Thank you to everybody who listened in.
Yep. Thank you. If anybody has a quick question, can we try taking them? Anybody wants to ask a question, you can raise your hand and we can take you. Anybody? No, not really. I don't see any hands up.
I think we're okay. Yeah, super.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, whoever joined in the session. Thank you, Tanisha, for making time for this and sharing your brilliant insights.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ramanoj. Always good talking to you. You take care. Stay safe. Stay safe, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye. You too.